What did you do today that brought you joy? At the end of the day, being in the wealth profession, wealth management, financial planning, at the end of the day, it's really not about the money. It's about what the money can do and what it means and how that money could, impact their lives and drive joy in their lives.
Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer at the Center for Victory. With us today is a guest that I think is going to bring us some joy, and the question behind him. So, Larry Sprung, what did you do today that brought you joy is a great question. So, a proud dad of two young men crafting their place in the world. Larry built his business, Mitlin Financial, while being present for his sons, including taking off every Friday in the summer. The fact that his sons ask him to hang out brings him the most joy. Being intentional with his time made an impact, and he strives to inspire other parents to enjoy the journey so that they can create lasting connections with their kids too. I'm going to stop there, Larry, and let you introduce the rest of your story and a little bit. It sounds like a little bit of your why behind this and why it's so impactful and why being joyful and bringing joy into your day needs to be a more of an intentional act. So, welcome to the show, Larry. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric. Pleasure to be here. And, just to fill in that blank, in terms of my why I introduced myself as a father to two boys, Jeremy and Zach, and husband of almost 25 years to Denise, first and foremost, is really, like you said, my why. I lost my mom at a very early age. She passed away at the age of 47. It was the day after my 23rd birthday. And, that was not the last time I was impacted by losing somebody at a very young age, because fast forward to about 21 years ago, right before launching my firm, Mitlin Financial, my wife and I lost her brother, my brother-in-law, to suicide at the age of 27. So when looking at those events of my life and how they impacted me, it was a real stark realization and a slap in the face to some degree that we don't all get the amount of time that we want or expect in this world. And when you're going to have kids and you want to have an impact on them and enjoy the time that you have with them, you have to really be intentional. So, really, those two events in my life really motivated me to make sure that I was a dad that was going to be around and in my kid's life, because, if I was only going to be here for a short period of time, I wanted to have an impact. Hopefully, I'll be here for a very long period of time. But that's really the why behind my story, and why family is so important, and we put family first always.
Uh, what's around the question, what did you do today that brought you joy? When did that start?
Yeah, so we really started leaning into that about 5 or 6 years ago, and really the impetus behind that, which has been transformational for our business as well, was 5 years ago. I launched my podcast called the Mitlin Money Mindset, and my wife, who happens to be our chief marketing officer, came to me and said, "Hey, we need a question that ties back to all of our guests. We need like a thought-provoking question that we ask each and every guest." And I was like, "Well, you're the marketing person. Figure it out and let me know." And and a couple days later, she came back and said, "I got it." She goes, "What did you do today that brought you joy?" And what we found was, as we started asking people, people lit up, really enjoyed answering that question. And then we started putting it on T-shirts and our computers. And really, the T-shirts were the impetus as I was going along on my regular, normal routines. People would stop me and answer the question. People would take pictures of the question. People would tell me their joy for the day. And probably the most impactful story was my family and I were online at Rise of the Resistance in Orlando at Magic Kingdom, not Magic Kingdom, but in in Disney World, and the Disney cast member broke character and just blurted out, "I ate a bag of Hershey Kisses." And I had no idea what she was talking about. Didn't even realize I was wearing the shirt. I look back at the family, and my older son looks at me and says, "Hey, dummy, she's answering your question." And that was really when we knew we were on to something, and we started incorporating it into everything that we do. All of our meetings with families now, especially new ones, start out with, "What did you do today that brought you joy?" And because at the end of the day, being in the wealth profession, wealth management, financial planning, at the end of the day, it's really not about the money. It's about what the money can do and what it means and how that money could impact their lives and drive joy in their lives. So we spend a lot of time talking to them about that, and that's really driven record growth to our practice.
Wonderful. So, as a proud dad of two young men, can you share how you've managed to build your business while prioritizing that time with your sons, like taking every Friday in the summer off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do it anymore. I did it when they were little. I
Yeah.
mean, right now they're 22 and 19. So, I'll take a day off when they come home for the summer for a
Uh,
day, just to spend that time with them. But yeah, I think it comes down to we all have choices at the end of the day. And, it's not my place to say one is right or one is wrong. There were a lot of people early on that gave me a lot of flack saying, "Hey, you're trying to build a business and you're taking off Fridays during the summer." And my answer to them was, yeah, because I only get so much time with my boys, and I want to make sure that we have that special time together. I mean, we've all heard the stats, the 18 summers with the kids. And, I would argue that probably 90% of the time that we get to spend with our kids are probably before the age of 12, because then they start going out doing other things with friends and whatnot. So I want to take advantage of that and be present and spend the time. So I think, again, no right or wrong here. I think for me, because of my background and my why that I talked about earlier, I basically built a game plan around that, and that coming first and foremost and protecting my time with the family, very specifically to make sure that I would be able to be there for their practices, for their games, for those Fridays during the summer. And I think it all comes down to each one of us, if we're going to be a leader, figuring out what our why is. And if your why is, going 100 miles an hour and building a business, so be it. It's your why, lean into that. For me, it was really leaning into that family life. And really what it's also translated into is not only building great ties with my family and guarding that time specifically, but with our practice is really building a family-like culture and environment with the folks that are stakeholders here that serve our families. And quite frankly, the families we serve, I feel, are attracted to that. So I think at the end of the day, it's a lot easier than we all think. It's just a matter of, figuring out what that why is and then building a strategy out around that.
well, you mentioned about your sons being older now, and I like the fact that my kids want to still hang out with me because they're actually older than your kids. But what do they like to do to hang out? What do you do when you hang out?
Anything that they want and they find interesting is interesting for me. So it could range from going out to a nice dinner, meeting up and going out to a nice dinner. It could mean going with them to a hockey or a Ranger game and spending that time together. Or, recently, both our boys reached out, and last year or this year in 2025, they went to the Barefoot Music Festival in Wildwood, New Jersey for 3 days. And they were like, "You guys would have a great time here." And they invited us to go with them in 2026. So we rented a house as a family, and we're going to go all together to the Barefoot Music Festival for 3 days, this coming year. So really, any time that they want to spend time with us doing whatever, it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be going on a fishing trip and just putting the lines in the water, and hopefully it's catching and not fishing. But we can't control that. But anything they want to do is time that we'll take out and make sure that we spend with them, because we always find joy in those times together.
Yeah. speak to this a little bit as well, Larry. How has being intentional with your time influenced your family life? But what advice do you have for other parents? Because you probably run into this a lot, as I do, looking to create like lasting connections with their kids.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and each child is, each kid is different, right? We tell my older son now, jokingly, but half not, that we apologize for some of the things that we put him through, and that we had him endure because he was an experiment. We don't, there's no manual, there's no way to tell, and to some degree, obviously, our second son really benefited from those ups and downs, things we did right, things we did wrong with the first one, and we apologized to the first one, all the time as a result. But I think, the kids remember everything, and there's so much impact that we could have on them as parents, and what I did, I feel worked for us, may or may not work for other families out there, but if you're having trials and tribulations, it might be worth a try. We fundamentally, my wife and I, just always agreed that our goal was to raise good humans. And that was really, at the end of the day, good humans that could be self-sufficient and live on their own. That was really like the mantra that we lived by. And you think about some of the things that you think are big and important, and at the end of the day, they're not really that important. They're important in that moment, or you may not know that they're not important until you figure that out. So I think just being there for them, being a sounding board, letting them know that you're there if and when they have trials and tribulations, not to judge, but just to listen, and spend that quality time with them. I think carving out that special time, and it doesn't have to be really extravagant. I think in the Instagram and social media world that we live in today, we think that we have to create this, unbelievably great environment for our kids in order to spend that time, and we have to work till our fingers to the bone to afford those times. But it's not really that. It's, some of the craziest things my kids remember are some of the silliest things, like going with them at a hockey tournament and spending time with them in a hotel, and playing knee hockey in a conference room or something like that. And, it's just those little things and those little memories, and you just want to make sure that you're there and intentional, putting the phone aside, which, that was a challenge for me running a business. But I would also say, if you are an entrepreneur, one thing that's important is, you know, not work-life separation, not work-life, work-life harmony. I call it work-life integration, or work-life, not work-life balance, work-life harmony. Because there were times, and my kids know this, there were times I had to take phone calls while we were on vacation or out doing something. But at the end of the day, they knew that the reason why I had to take those phone calls was because it was something that was driving the business. And ultimately, that was the thing and what allowed us to spend this time together. So, you don't have to choose, but at the same time, when you're there and with them, you want to be intentional and focused in on them and what's going on. So it doesn't have to be extravagant. Spend the time, spend the effort. If that's where you want to build your future and build a family culture, then I think that's the way to do it. It's worked for me, at least.
Yeah, it's as far as, the passing of your mother and then your brother-in-law, how has that impacted your perspective, and what do you make sure you emphasize, I guess, in life and into people that you're assisting?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things, especially in our practice, where we're talking about financial planning and, moving towards, if they want, towards a retirement date or things like that. One of the things I talk about very often, and I think that our profession to some degree gets it wrong, is, we're all focused on this, retirement phenomenon. And, personally, I don't believe in retirement. I believe that for me personally, I will probably always do some type of work. It may be different. I may slow down, but I think retirement not only slows down income and resources, but it also slows down your mental acuity. Unless you can figure out a way to replace those meaningful hours, it could be a challenge for many. So, when I look back at my mom, for example, and I talked to her about her with families, had her and my dad socked away everything that they could for retirement, at the end of the day, they wouldn't have benefited from that. She never made it to a retirement date. So should she have not gone on the bucket list trip that her and my dad took to Hawaii and socked that money away into a retirement fund? There are many pundits out there that say, yes, you should put that away and worry about it for later. But later does not come for everyone. So I think what we need to do is create a balance and a harmony between creating joy today, and creating that lifestyle and that future that we want at the same time. And I feel like many in our profession really talk about early on just sock everything away, go minimalistic. You don't need to drink the coffee, for example. You don't need to go on the trip. And the reality is, hey, you know what? I get a lot of joy out of drinking my $3, $4 cup of Starbucks. I enjoy that when I do it. But I also budget for it and I know I can afford it. So I think there's got to be a balance there of knowing what you can afford and getting joy and saving for retirement and figuring out a way to serve all of those so that, if you are somebody like my mom and don't make it towards retirement, there is joy along the way. And it's really reframed a lot of the thinking that I have around retirement and what that should look like, leading up to retirement and in and through retirement. And something we talk often with families about. And I think the profession, in a lot of cases, does not get it exactly right.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about mental health. Um, I know why that's important to you from your story, but can you speak to that and how you might incorporate that in some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I think mental health, is vitally important, but it gets overlooked a lot, right? We again, I think that in our profession, there's a lot of time spent on the money, right? The financial end, because that's where people think they have to focus. But the reality is, it's not really about the money, like I mentioned earlier, and it's really you have three stools, three legs to the stool that you have to really pay attention to. One is the financial, which, obviously, if you're in this profession, you should be able to do that. One is your physical health also. And secondly, and lastly, I should say, is your mental health. So, and they're inextricably intertwined, right? If you have all the money in the world, but you haven't taken care of your health, physical or mental, you're not going to be set up for success. But on the flip side, if you've taken care of your mental health, but not your physical or your financial, same thing. So you really have to figure out a balance between those three, and they're equally important, for living a joyful, long, sustaining, and fulfilling life. And by being able to have that conversation, and because of my background, many people already know the background, so they feel comfortable talking with me about mental health. It's important to do that because, like I said earlier, retirement is not cut out for everyone. And there are a lot of people who think they have to retire just because the universe and the world has set people up to this construct that as you approach age 60, 62, 65, 67, that you're supposed to retire. I think it's kind of a messed up construct because nobody spends any time on preparing for that retirement. They're not spending any time figuring out, well, okay, if I'm not going to be at the office 40, 50, 60 hours a week, what am I going to do with that time? And a lot of people end up retiring because they think they have to. And then they figure out that they're unfulfilled, that they have this big void. And then they start looking for work again. And, the world leads us to believe that those people are looking for work again because of financial reasons and they need the money. And in a lot of cases, and don't get me wrong, there are people who do, and that's understandable in the world and the environment we're in today. But there are plenty more that just needed to fill that mental void because they are just lost. So as we approach a retirement, or if that's something you want to do as you're approaching later in life, you have to not only focus on the fact of whether or not you're financially secure enough to do that, but you also have to understand and start putting a plan in place for what you're going to do with that newfound free time. And figure out, do I have the social infrastructure in place? Do I have enough friends outside of work? Do I have hobbies that are going to be able to take up my time? Golf sounds great, playing golf every day, twice a day, but in reality, that gets old very quick. And most people don't find joy in doing that, and short order, they're looking for something else. So as well as we plan for that financial piece, we have to plan for the mental, and we also have to take care of our physical health along the way, because who wants to live till 80 or 90 if you can't walk down the street or have a conversation? That makes it very difficult and challenging.
Yeah, I love the fact of what you just said, because I'm not a big advocate for retirement either, because it's like, you just kind of let go of your purpose sometimes. I understand why people do it, but I think if you're doing the right things, if you're taking care of yourself, and you're doing and you're living out your why, there's no reason that you have to come to a complete stop with that. I mean, you can do it like, yeah, my wife and I plan to do it until, until we're gone. I mean, that's just what we do. It's a bigger why, but it also gives us, I'm looking at, again, that question
Yeah.
behind you. What
Yeah.
did you do that brought you joy today? I mean, that's part of what we do, brings us a huge amount of joy.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges, right? Again, we've been kind of embedded with these constructs that work is our identity, work is giving our value, and for some that's absolutely true, and maybe that's the best use of their time.
Mhm.
But I also think we have to figure out along the way, you know, that why and what's truly important to us, what's truly our identity, and have that outside of work. And I find that those that do find whatever that is for them have a greater success rate at finding joy. And if work is it, then then you definitely have an issue. If work is your identity and you come cold turkey stop, that's going to be a problem. And you
Mhm.
have to identify, how are you going to fill that void? And again, most people are just focused myopically on the financial aspect and not thinking about the physical and mental. And again, nobody can tell you what this is for you. You have to really take the time, the effort, and put in the work to figure out what is most important to you, and what do you want the next 3 to 5 years or 10 years to look like for you, and then go out and craft it.
Mhm. Good stuff. So I'm going to ask you about that question. So your business tagline, what did you do today that brought you joy? Has, you said at the beginning, has led to some remarkable growth for you that has transformed your firm. Um, what I have in front of me, um, achieving 24% growth compared to the industry 3%. Is that correct? Do I have those facts correct?
Yeah, so in industry average for our profession in wealth management is measured by what we call net new assets. So net
Hmm.
new assets coming into the firm. And the average firm in our profession is growing organically in net new assets by only 3%, which is, I think it's crazy. And, we're growing, 24% as you mentioned. And a lot of that has to do with the way we shifted our conversations. We're not just conversing about the money, we're conversing with the families about what did they do today that brought them joy. And, we're having more meaningful conversations about what their ultimate goals are for the money. We still have to figure out how to grow the money, how to distribute the money, the taxes. Those are all things that are what we call table stakes in our profession. But I
Hmm.
think by having these meaningful conversations and learning that a family wants to send their daughter, for example, to medical school debt free, just knowing that they want to do that and helping them strive to be sitting in the in the audience while their daughter crosses the stage getting their diploma and not owing anything for her education for medical school, that's amazing. Or if they want to name a community center that they want to walk through the doors someday that's named after them, or just simply buying a vacation home and sitting on their beachfront terrace or porch and listening to the waves break. Those are the meaningful conversations that we've been having, and then we help them design a plan around that financially that'll work towards that goal. But I think by starting out there rather than the numbers has really what's been the most impactful for us.
How often do you present that question to your clients? What did you do today that brought you joy?
Probably every meeting we integrate it in some way, shape, or form. Definitely when we meet with a new family, that's where we start, right?
Mhm.
Because that we want to know what did they do today that brought them joy, and have them understand that this is what we want to help them strive for, to have more joyful days in their lives and work towards that each and every day. So it's in every piece of messaging that we do and things that I talk about, and something that we talk often about. I get random texts from families. They'll send me a random text. They went hiking and they'll send us a text saying, "Hey, this brought me joy today," or they'll tag us on social media. This news story brought us a lot of joy today, and they'll tag us in that. It's kind of become its own phenomenon, and we started telling people to enjoy, and instead of just writing ENJOY, we would capitalize the JOY. And we're getting emails back from families that we work with and others with that same moniker. So we definitely knew we were onto something when that all started happening as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Before I ask you our last question, how do people get in touch with you if they want to check it out more?
Yeah, so the easiest way is if you're a business person, you can find me on LinkedIn under Lawrence Sprung. Feel free to message me, connect with me. You can get to everything that we have going on right from there. The other way is our website, mitlinfinancial.com. Which you could also get to my book, my podcast, my YouTube channel, all means. So whether you're on LinkedIn or not, one of those will get you to learn more and connect with us if you have any specific questions.
Good stuff. And then for the last question, because the podcast is called Your Best Day Yet, Larry, what does your best day look like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're getting better all the time, which is good. I hope today isn't my best day yet. What's the old saying? We've made it thus far and we've made it through all the worst days. So
Mhm.
even if today's the best day, I want another best day. But
Right.
for me, it's spending time with my wife, my kids, doing something that we all enjoy and doing it together, whether it's a concert, whether it's a hockey game, a meal, whatever that is. Just I'll share one quick one that we just experienced two Fridays ago. My wife and I we're from Long Island, drove down to the Philadelphia area, met my older son and his girlfriend for dinner. And then the four of us went to watch my younger son play in his junior hockey game. And then we get to hang out a little bit after his game all together. So that was a really great day, probably one of the best days that week. And, I'm just looking to create as many of those best days and create those best days yet going forward each and every day if possible.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you so much for being on and for such a great and inspiring message. And I will send that back to our viewers and our listeners. What did you do today that brought you joy? Love it, Larry.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah. If you want more information, gang, you can always reach us at centerforvictory.com. And just remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. We'll see you soon.